My name is Ethan Walker, and until 3 years ago, I believed every missing person case had an explanation. Then, my father disappeared. It happened in the small town of Millfield, Ohio, where everyone knew everyone. My dad, Robert Walker, was the kind of man who never missed a day of work, never forgot a birthday, and never left home without telling someone where he was going. On October 14th, he vanished. No note, no signs of a struggle, no suspicious bank transactions. Just gone. The police searched for weeks. Volunteers combed forests and abandoned barns. Local news stations covered the story. Eventually, the search slowed, and life moved on. For everyone. Except my family. My mother stopped setting a place for him at dinner after 6 months. I never stopped looking. 3 years later, I received a voicemail. It came at exactly 2:17 a.m. I was living in Chicago by then, trying to rebuild my life. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Half asleep, I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. The voicemail notification appeared a few seconds later. I almost ignored it. Instead, I pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then I heard breathing. Heavy breathing. And then a voice. A voice I hadn't heard in 3 years. Ethan. I sat bolt upright. My heart nearly stopped. Dad? The recording continued. If you're hearing this, don't come looking for me. Static crackled. Then another sentence. They know where I am. The voicemail ended. I listened again. And again. By sunrise, I'd played it 20 times. The voice was unmistakable. It was my father. The police weren't convinced. A detective suggested it might be an old recording altered by someone online. But the phone company traced the signal. The voicemail had originated from a payphone. A payphone in rural West Virginia. Less than 12 hours earlier. My mother begged me not to go. The police told me to wait. I drove there anyway. The payphone stood beside an abandoned gas station, surrounded by mountains and dense woods. The receiver hung crookedly. No fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing. Except for one thing. Carved into the metal booth was a message. R.W. My father's initials. Below them were 3 words. Look under bridge. There was only one bridge nearby. A rusting steel railroad bridge spanning a narrow river. I parked and walked beneath it. The place smelled of wet earth and old wood. At first I found nothing. Then I noticed a small metal box hidden between rocks. Inside was a photograph. My hands shook as I picked it up. The picture showed my father. Older. Thinner. Standing in front of a cabin. Written on the back were coordinates and one sentence. I tried to leave. The coordinates led deep into the mountains, hours from the nearest town. Cell service vanished halfway there. As evening approached, I reached a dirt road, barely visible from the highway. At the end stood a cabin. The same cabin from the photograph. Lights glowed behind the curtains. Someone was inside. I stepped onto the porch. The door opened before I could knock. An old woman stared at me. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I'm looking for my father." Her expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. "Leave now." Before I could respond, another voice came from inside. A familiar voice. Ethan? My entire body froze. My father stepped into the doorway. Older. Gray-haired. Alive. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I hugged him. He hugged me back and started crying. My father had never cried in his life. Not when his own father died, not when he lost his job during the recession. Yet there he was, shaking, terrified. How? I whispered. What happened? He looked over his shoulder, then closed the door behind us. The cabin felt strangely empty. No photographs, no television, no personal belongings. Just necessities. Like someone had been hiding. Not living. Hiding. They won't let me leave, he said. Who? He stared at the floor. The people who saved me. 3 years earlier, my father had crashed his truck during a storm. The vehicle rolled into a ravine. He broke several bones and lost consciousness. When he woke up, strangers had rescued him, a group living off-grid in the mountains. At first, they cared for him, fed him, treated his injuries. Then, they took his phone, his wallet, his truck keys. When he demanded to leave, they refused. According to them, the outside world was ending. Governments were collapsing. Cities were becoming war zones. Only their community would survive. My father thought they were crazy. Until months passed. Every escape attempt failed. The mountains were vast. The group watched everyone constantly. Eventually, he stopped trying. "Why send the voicemail now?" I asked. His face hardened. "Because they're recruiting." "What does that mean?" Before he answered, headlights appeared outside. Several vehicles. My father's expression drained of color. "They're back." The old woman rushed to the window. Oh, God. A dozen people stepped from the vehicles, all wearing identical dark jackets, all staring directly at the cabin. At me. They knew I was there. One of them approached the porch. A tall man with silver hair. He knocked politely. 3 times. My father whispered, "Don't answer." The man knocked again, then spoke calmly. "Ethan, we'd like to talk." I hadn't told anyone I was coming. No social media posts, no calls, nothing. Yet they knew my name. The realization chilled me. The man smiled through the window. "You came all this way to find your father." He paused. "Now let us explain why he stayed." What followed was 4 hours of conversation. Stories, predictions, warnings. Some sounded insane. Others were disturbingly accurate. The leader knew details about my life he shouldn't have known. Where I worked, where I lived, my college roommate's name. Everything. By midnight, I didn't know what to believe. Then my father pulled me aside. "Listen carefully." "What?" "They want you to join them." "I won't." His eyes filled with fear. "You don't understand. They won't let you leave knowing what you've seen." At dawn, we escaped through a rear window. We ran into the forest. Branches tore at our clothes. Voices echoed behind us. They were chasing us. Hours later, we reached the highway. A truck driver picked us up. We went straight to federal authorities. An investigation began immediately. agents raided the property. The cabin was empty. Every vehicle gone. Every building abandoned. No records. No names. No evidence. It was as if the entire community had vanished overnight. Today, my father lives quietly in Arizona. He refuses interviews. He refuses to discuss those missing years. Sometimes I ask questions. He always changes the subject. But once, after a few drinks, he admitted something. Something that still keeps me awake. When I asked whether the group had truly believed the world was ending, he looked at me and said, "They didn't believe it." "What do you mean?" He stared into the darkness.
"Because some of the things they predicted came true." I laughed nervously. He didn't. Then he added one final sentence. A sentence I wish I'd never heard. "They weren't hiding from the world, Ethan." He looked directly at me. "They were hiding from something else." And no matter how many times I've asked, he has never told me what that something was. The only thing I know is this. Every October 14th, my father locks every door, closes every curtain, and refuses to leave the house until sunrise.
My name is Tyler Morgan, and 3 years ago, I experienced something on a flight from Seattle to Denver that I still can't explain. I've never told this story publicly. Most people would think I'm crazy. Maybe they're right. But everything I'm about to tell you happened exactly as I remember it. And ever since that night, I refuse to sit in seat 17B on any airplane. It was November 2023. I had been visiting family in Seattle and was flying home to Denver after Thanksgiving. The flight was delayed because of bad weather. By the time we boarded, it was almost midnight. Everyone looked exhausted. Parents carried sleeping children. Business travelers stared blankly at their phones. I found my assigned seat, 17A, a window seat. The middle seat beside me, 17B, was empty. I was hoping it would stay that way. No such luck. Just before the doors closed, a man stepped aboard. He looked to be in his late 50s. Gray hair, dark coat, black leather gloves. Nothing unusual. Yet something about him immediately caught my attention. He wasn't carrying any luggage, not even a backpack. And despite the crowded cabin, he moved down the aisle without looking at anyone, like he already knew exactly where he was going. Then he stopped, right beside me, seat 17B. "Excuse me," he said softly. I stood to let him pass. As he sat down, I noticed something odd. His clothes were completely dry. Everyone else who had come in from the rain had damp jackets, wet shoes, messy hair. Not him. He looked untouched, perfect, almost too perfect. The flight took off 20 minutes later. For the first hour, everything was normal. The man sat silently beside me. No reading, no phone, no headphones, nothing. Just staring straight ahead. At one point, the flight attendant came by with drinks. "What can I get you, sir?" The man didn't answer. She frowned. "Sir?" Still nothing. Finally, she shrugged and moved on. I assumed he was asleep, until I looked over. His eyes were open, wide open, staring directly at the seat in front of him. Around 1:30 a.m., most passengers had fallen asleep. The cabin lights were dim. Outside the windows was complete darkness. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I heard a voice. The man's voice. "You shouldn't be on this flight." I looked at him. For the first time since boarding, He was looking directly at me. His expression was completely serious. What? You shouldn't be here. I laughed nervously. Okay. Then I put my headphones back on. I figured he was drunk or mentally ill. A few minutes later, I fell asleep. I woke up suddenly. No idea why. The cabin was silent. Everyone appeared asleep. Then I noticed something strange. The seat beside me was empty. The man was gone. I checked the aisle. Nothing. Maybe he was in the restroom. But as I looked around, something felt wrong. Very wrong. The plane seemed quieter than before. Too quiet. Not a single cough. Not a single movement. Not even a snore. Every passenger sat perfectly still. A chill ran through me. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood. Hello? No response. I walked to the nearest row. The woman sitting across the aisle wasn't moving. Neither was the man beside her. I reached out and touched his shoulder. Cold. Ice cold. My heart began pounding. Every passenger on the plane appeared frozen. Not dead. Not asleep. Frozen. Like statues. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the rear of the aircraft. I turned. The man from seat 17B stood at the far end of the aisle, watching me. What's happening? He didn't answer. Instead, he started walking toward me. Each step echoed unnaturally loud. The closer he got, the colder the cabin became. I could actually see my breath. When he reached me, he stopped. The entire plane felt frozen in time. No engine noise, no turbulence, nothing. Just silence. Then he said, "You're seeing something you weren't meant to see." "What are you talking about?" His eyes moved toward the passengers. They're paused. My stomach dropped. Paused? He nodded. For a few minutes. I stared at him. This isn't real. It is. I looked toward the windows. Outside wasn't darkness anymore. At least not normal darkness. There were lights. Thousands of lights. Floating beside the aircraft. Moving with us. Keeping pace. Some looked like stars. Others looked almost human. Shapes made entirely of pale white light. I stumbled backward. What are those? The man glanced toward them. Travelers. What does that mean? It means you're awake when you shouldn't be. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But where? We were 30,000 feet in the air. The man looked almost sad. I warned you. You warned me about what? His expression darkened. Most people sleep through the crossing. The crossing? He pointed out the window. For a brief second, I saw something impossible. The plane wasn't flying through clouds. It was flying through a massive black opening stretching across the sky. A crack, like reality itself had split apart, and the aircraft was moving directly through it. Then, Alarms suddenly erupted throughout the cabin. Passengers gasped awake. Lights flickered. The roar of the engines returned. Everything was normal again. People looked around in confusion. A baby started crying. Someone laughed nervously. The frozen moment was over. I turned to seat 17B. The man was sitting there, calmly, like nothing had happened. I grabbed his arm. What was that? He looked genuinely confused. What was what? The flight attendant appeared. "Sir, is everything okay?" I pointed at the man. "Tell her!" The attendant frowned. "Sir, you've been asleep for nearly 3 hours." "No, I haven't." "Yes, you have." Then she looked at seat 17B, and her expression changed. "Sir." "What?" "Who are you talking to?" I slowly turned. The seat beside me was empty. Completely empty. No man, no coat, no passenger. Nothing. After landing, I demanded answers. The airline checked the manifest. Seat 17B had never been assigned. No passenger occupied it. Nobody matching his description boarded the flight. Security footage confirmed it. As far as official records were concerned, I had flown alone in my row. That should have been the end. But 6 months later, I was waiting for another flight in Chicago. I happened to glance at a framed photograph hanging near a gate. It showed an old airline crew from the 1980s. One face immediately caught my attention. My blood ran cold. It was him, the man from seat 17B. The same face, the same gray hair, the same expression. I asked an airport employee about the photo. She looked at it and smiled. "Oh, that's Captain Richard Hale." "Who is he?" "He died in a crash back in 1987. I felt dizzy. "What crash?" She pointed toward a small plaque beneath the picture. It read, "In memory of Captain Richard Hale and the 127 passengers of Flight 305. Date of incident, November 28, 1987. Exactly 36 years before my flight. The same day, the same route, Seattle to Denver." I left the airport without saying another word. To this day, I don't know what happened that night. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe exhaustion caused some kind of hallucination. Maybe my mind invented the entire thing. But every November 28th, I wake up at exactly 1:30 a.m. And for a few seconds, before I fully open my eyes, I hear a familiar voice beside me. Calm, quiet, warning me. The same words every year. You shouldn't be on this flight.